gotten a ton of questions lately on the full process that I use for my Procreate drawings, and while most of my drawings usually take a few hours to complete, here's a sped up version of some of the highlights. Typically I start with a general palette in mind, and the Procreate brush that I use here is actually one that I created myself to make it look more like an actual drawing. I always work in layers to make sure that I can go back and change things as I need it. I am by no means a classically trained artist, so I really consider a lot of the artwork pieces that I create as doodles and abstract. I mostly do florals, and I always turn them into seamless patterns so that they can be printed on products, fabrics, and all sorts of other things. For composition, I typically start with larger pockets of florals, create blooms first, add in leaves, stems, and then other accents and colors as I go. My drawing really started as the quiet activity that I did in the evenings after my son went to bed. So sometimes I really like how they come out, and sometimes they're just a doodle. As I'm building layers, I usually add in a few different styles of flowers. Some have a few more steps and layers, and others are more simplified and abstract. I do this for no specific reason other than the fact that it's just my style of drawing. That's the beauty of art. There's no right or wrong way to do it, and having your own style and aesthetic is what makes it unique to you. Not everyone will love your art, and that's okay too. Once I've got in flowers, I typically then back out, take a look and see if I need anything else, and sometimes fill in empty space with vines like this. You'll notice imperfections here and there, and again I usually leave those in because it gives it more character. It makes it look less like a digital drawing and more like a realistic one. Once I've got my drawing completely in place, I always go in and duplicate that canvas. That's because if I ever need to go back, I want an original that still has all of the individual layers, because once I'm ready to make a pattern, I combine all of the layers together. Then I go into my drawing guide, edit it, and make sure that it's at max so that I have 4 squares. To make sure my pattern is seamless, I then stretch my canvas to make sure it's against all 4 edges. Then I'm going to duplicate that layer 3 more times so that I have 4 total layers. Then it's a matter of grabbing each layer individually and sliding it. I'm not shrinking it, I'm sliding it to each of the 4 corners. Turning on snapping, magnets, and the drawing guide really helps with this part. Once I've got that first pass done, I then adjust the image as needed. I can slice pieces of the image and move things around if I need to, and I can also fill in any empty gaps. Each time I add a new element, I make sure that I blend it into the original layer so that I'm always in one layer. This is different than the first part, but you'll see why. Part of my style is also having little dot accents, so this is the point where I also add in those as well because I can use it to fill in gaps. Once I'm completely done at this point, I then make sure everything is in one layer and duplicate 3 times again so that I have, again, 4 layers. This time we're turning it into the repeating pattern, so we are shrinking each of the layers to all the corners. Make sure they all line up as you're doing it, and then I turn off my drawing grid and zoom in to make sure I got it right. If you're like me, sometimes you get to the end and you don't like the original background color, so quite often I'll change it, or even make multiple designs with different backgrounds using the same florals. And that's all there is to it. Hope this was helpful. Feel free to drop your questions in the comments.